Welcome to Mindful Live 116. We are now streaming live over on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube too. So make sure to tune in and hit that like button wherever you are looking at. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you do. Over on TikTok, you can hit the like button multiple times, just by the way. That's just how it works. They want to know that you really like it. So you hit that button. You hit that button a lot. Tonight, in the chat, they were trying to pull me into the bacchanal very early in all of this, but I prefer not to start with the bacchanal. Let's not put our foot forward on a bacchanalish footing first. We're talking about issues of equity versus equality. That's what we're starting talking about tonight. And the reason I thought of this is I read a letter to the editor. I read a letter to the editor from a Trinidadian, and they pointed out something that I didn't even know. I didn't hear the speech given on Emancipation Day by the Minister of National Security. I believe he was the replacement for the Prime Minister at the Emancipation Day. He gave the speech instead of the Prime Minister, and I didn't hear that speech. So I read a letter to the editor. They pointed out something in that letter that I had to go back and make sure was true. And I found it very interesting. Let's dive in one time. Open letter to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on land distribution. Oh, right. Before we jump in one time, as your interest are piqued, tonight we have a sponsor. We have a sponsor tonight. The first sponsor that is not mindful. And that is the sponsor of these charts. These lovely charts you see behind me here. There's a Trinidad, there's a Tobago, and there's a Caribbean. Now, you mightn't get to see too much details from the distance you're seeing at, but just so you know, these charts have the origins of the names, as in where the names for the different communities came in. So like on the Trinidad map, they have names based on influence: Amerindian, Spanish, English, French, East Indian. So you could go through the map and see where the names were gotten from. It's the same thing as on the Tobago map, and it's also a pretty detailed map where you get to see everything. You get to see the main Ridge Forest Reserve, where nobody lives there, if you are familiar with that statement. And you could actually see that the main Ridge really doesn't have any communities in it, just to be honest. But these maps were sponsored by Study Monkey and Associates, SM and Associates. I believe they are in the chat right now over on TikTok. You could head over. I believe their Facebook page is the main one. I believe they also have an Instagram and they have a TikTok too. Yes, nobody lives there on that main range. But the maps were sponsored by SM and Associates. They're map makers, they're chart makers. They don't only make maps, they make lots of local educational charts. Check them out over on Facebook. Oh, look them right in the chat over there on TikTok. You can feel free to hit them a follow. They sponsored these lovely maps you are seeing here. So as long, yes, it is a local business, Massimo Original over on Instagram. Of course, it's a local business. SM Resources. So feel free to head over to their pages, hit it a like, hit it a follow, and buy their charts, buy their maps. They are not expensive. They're very reasonable. I might say even on the super reasonable side. And when I mean they have charts, they have nearly anything you'd want to teach a Trinidadian child from the age of 3 till the age probably 15. They have nearly anything in that range. So do hit them up. And as long as these charts are up here, they will remain a sponsor. As I told some of the small business people over in the live, feel free to hit me up. Feel free to hit me up. When I'm saying sponsorship, I'm not necessarily talking about you have to give me a couple $1,000s. We'll work something out and we'll get your product out there. That's the aim we're aiming for right now. So Study Monkey, SM and Associates, SM Resources, feel free to hit them up and get you yourself some charts just like I did. But yes, we're getting into the story of the day. It's a letter to the Prime Minister and an opinion piece over on The Guardian, and that was what brought my attention to the actual substantive matter. But let's read the letter quickly. Open letter to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on land distribution. I write to you seeking clarification on disturbing statements made recently by the Honourable Member of Parliament, Fitzgerald Hinds. Mr. Hinds clearly states that the Cabinet has taken a position of black affirmative action in agricultural land distribution. I don't know how many of you know what affirmative action is, but that, good night, Auntie Do, that refers to basically equity. You know, making certain rules or laws, putting them in place to help those who may be seen as struggling in an area. So you give them that boost. Mr. Prime Minister, the letter goes on, may I remind you that Wallerfield and Carsonfield farming projects under the PNM were failed affirmative actions oriented projects. Billions were spent with only abandoned farms not long later. Mr. Prime Minister, you cannot legislate or make a farmer by allocating land and tools. Farming requires a love of tilling the land and a spirit of independence, no matter how harsh the conditions and how poorly the returns on investments. If this is how the policy of our government, if this is now the policy of our government, can I reasonably now to expect the same equity in the distribution of state jobs in the civil service that have traditionally been Afro-dominated? Can I expect to see more Indian policemen? Can I now expect to see more people of East Indian descent in your cabinet? Can I finally see equality in the distribution of state resources for funding of cultural events, distribution of HDC houses, etc.? It would be unwise for the government to cherry pick at what is equal and what is not. Affirmative action has never been proven to work, no matter where it is tried, and has only served narrow domestic politics at the expense of state resources. I'm not going to read necessarily who wrote the letter. Good night, Richard Glubman. I didn't hear this comment at all. Well, that was me to curve on. I read this letter to the editor in The Guardian, and I was like, I didn't hear that comment. When was that made? So I went looking for the comment, as I usually do. You know, I'm a curious guy. And speaking of curiosity, I'll hit you with the other sponsor, and this is the sponsor for every night, Mindful. But we're also aiming to expand in the coming school year. I am aiming to restart some lessons programs and some tutoring programs. So I will create that Mindful educational page over on Instagram soon, and you will be able to register those who would be interested in such. So this is also being brought to you by Mindful Education, soon to be launched. And the idea that I'm going for in this is curiosity, because I was always someone very curious, as probably you could tell. I didn't really like school though. I always enjoyed learning. I liked learning. I was good at school, pretty good at school, but I didn't like it because I found that school killed my curiosity. What makes me learn a lot is that I'm a curious person. So if I'm curious about something, I'll go find it out for myself. But I found that school has a tendency to stifle that curiosity a bit. And I think for years I've done tutoring probably 15 years now. I've been a tutor, and something I've noticed, the general teaching technique I try to use while tutoring is to open someone's curiosity. When you open someone's curiosity to a topic, you'd recognize someone who hated math. You allow them to see how math makes sense. Ria, we will reach there eventually. You open up someone's curiosity to allow math to make practical sense in what they're dealing with in their life, and all of a sudden you recognize they have a voracious appetite to learn more about math. Someone who hated math their entire life, you allow them to see how it could be curious, and they like it more. So that's the intended technique as I go forward inside of the Mindful Education. So stay tuned for that. If you have some young ones, looking for some extra classes, or if you are a young one looking for some extra classes yourself. I still hate maths. Well, you could join the class. We'll see if we could change that. We'll see what we could do about that. All right. Now, this is where the origin of that statement came from. A Guardian article again that covered this. Gift for emancipation. Government moves to rename roads, national spaces, etc., etc. Now, the article goes through some decisions that the government has made recently. They appointed a committee. Do you still tutor? I am. Yes, I do. When I start the page, you'd be able to get more precisely the registration for that. According to how the classes go, I may do much less tutoring, because the thing with tutoring is mostly it's one-on-one. And as you would appreciate, your time is really constrained with one-on-one. So if there are much more people who would like to enter into the pod style learning classes, where the intention is around 6 students, and hopefully remain with the 6 students continuing over a lengthy period of time, where they could build some trust with each other, with the teacher, and ask questions more openly, be more honestly curious about what they are curious about. That's the intention for the pod classes. So according to how many pod classes and how many students go there, the tutoring will be limited. But yes, I still do tutoring also privately. Yes. So the article goes through explaining some of the decisions that the government made. Good night, J. Chris. So they made some decisions. There was some clamoring coming out of the Emancipation Support Committee that they were angry. The usual thing that we have heard for some time now about the colonial names, the colonial statues, the different colonial representations still in our society. And they wanted some of that changed. The government agreed. They appointed a committee to do this. We'll get into that a little later. But now we're going into what Mr. Hines said, referring to in recalling the struggles of African ancestors to establish themselves and fight for freedom. Hines said the government was committed to ensuring this set of people continued to improve their circumstances. Referring to the applications government had received for state lands to be used for agricultural purposes, he admitted, this is Mr. Hines speaking here, we did not see African people among the enthusiasts in that regard. He was saying there, that many people of African descent in Trinidad and Tobago were not applying for state lands for agricultural purposes. Hines assured, however, we have taken action as a government and as a cabinet to ensure that when we deal with these applications, we see equity and we see balance, and that is happening now. What does he mean by that? If less people of African descent applied for agricultural state lands, but when you are dealing with the applications, you're saying that you're going to ensure that there's equity and balance in it. How does one do that? How does that happen? Where does that equity and balance come from? That is the question, SM Resources. How? And to me, that is the same question the letter writer was asking. Now, I remember the letter writer spoke about whether there's going to be equity inside of the police service. And I remember a comment on that several years ago. I believe it was the criminologist, Mr. Diosaran, Dr. Diosaran, I believe he is. And during the People's Partnership tenure, he was lamenting about the inequity in the police service ranks as it comes to the distribution of the major races in Trinidad and Tobago. To say that more plainly, he was commenting that there were not as many East Indians as police officers than Afro-Trinidadians. And if we are talking equity here, should we be aiming at equity there? And Massimo over on Instagram says, I assume it cannot be reasonably done without making it exclusionary to certain groups of individuals. And that seems like a problem, because if there are limited applications for state agricultural land and the percentage is 75% Indo-Trinidadian to 25% Afro-Trinidadian applicants, if you want to make it then 50-50, you are going to have to kick out 25% of the Indian applicants. Are you listening to that? Does that make sense? And as the letter wrote, he called it affirmative action. Well, I don't, yes, it was a pundit. He called it affirmative action. And that is what affirmative action is. Do we want that in a country like ours? And he commented that affirmative action has never been proven to work. And in the US, they are obsessed with affirmative action, especially the left-wing side, the Democrats, they are obsessed with it. Mostly, I believe, because 95% of black women vote for Democrats, so it's an emotional black issue, so they love to push it really strong. But it does not really work. And one of the things it causes very regularly is racial strife, because when you are in a college, this happens very often over in the United States. I was watching an interview with a black college student, and she was in a college, and someone asked her, they were talking about affirmative action, and in the conversation, someone asked her if she feels like she deserves to be here, and she says she doesn't even know. And that's part of the problem, because if you are allowed in here and some favor something, you don't even know if you are legitimately there, if you deserve to be there. That's one part. And if someone isn't as interested as the letter writer wrote, it happens in UE too. Well, I don't know how it happens in UE, to be very honest. I don't know the runnings and inside workings of UE, to be honest. To be honest, I don't think anyone knows how UE really runs. I remember every single year for registration, it seemed like the entirety of the students and the staff were confused. You talk to the staff, they tell you go ask that one. You talk to that one, they tell you go to your faculty. They tell you go to the admin. They tell you go to the old admin, and it's no one really knows how UE runs, to be very honest with you. But affirmative action, I also remember, now this example isn't fully affirmative action, but it lines up pretty directly with the whole farming land business. Over in Zimbabwe, when President Mugabe was in charge, Africa has a long history of colonialism and advantage by Europeans. For quite some time, much of the farmland in Zimbabwe and in many parts in Africa were owned and run by white majority, they were majority owned by white people who were a minority in the country. Now, Mr. Mugabe decided that's a horrible thing. He snatched the land from the white owners. And gave it to black owners. You know, redistribution of the wealth. There's nothing wrong with giving assistance to those who want to work in the field of agriculture. I agree. We'll get to that. Now, he snatched the land from the white owners and gave it over to the black owners, to the African owners. But you see, as the writer wrote in the letter, agriculture and farming is not something that just any and everyone could do. It's a skill. It requires a lot of resilience. As some of you who listen to the live long enough know, I do some farming on my own, and I can tell you it's not exactly the easiest type of work. You have to really enjoy this, probably not enjoy it necessarily, but you have to be into it. So to just, especially if we put the bar for you to enter agriculture, is just applying for the state land. If you do not have the interest to apply for the agricultural land in the first place, who are we to assume that you would have the interest to run the farm? And the problem with this is that it uses active discrimination. And it raises the question that should we use present discrimination to counter past discrimination? If people were discriminated against previously, do we now discriminate for them to make it equitable again? Society-wise, we're talking about. We're not talking about ask them about Wallerfield. We read about Wallerfield in the letter to the editor. The writer of the letter to the editor spoke about Wallerfield and the failed plans in Wallerfield too. Massimo says the beneficiary of AA may therefore be unwilling or unable to effectively and efficiently utilize the agricultural land, which can result in wastage of resources. That's the same thing Mr. Sanram over on TikTok is talking about, and it was the same thing that the writer of the letter to the editor spoke about also. He spoke about it, where was that? Mr. Prime Minister, may I remind you that Wallerfield and Carsonfield farming projects under the PNM were failed affirmative actions-oriented projects. So, yes, they spoke about that too. It fails. It usually does. It very often does. And one of the problems, as I was saying, is it requires active discrimination from a government, from the state. Now, if this is a private entity, to me, my personal view, I don't find it wrong for private businesses to discriminate. Personally, I find if it's your private business, if it's your private resources, you can discriminate if you want. But when it comes to public resources, should there be an avenue for present discrimination to counter past discrimination? So right now it's probably dying a bit right now as we speak, but in the United States, there has been some argument about something called anti-racism. There's racism and there's what they're calling anti-racism. And anti-racism is really just racism in the other direction. They're saying that the only cure for past discrimination is present discrimination. And I find that ridiculous, because what that is going to do is it's always going to be on a pendulum. So past discrimination was on this side. We found that was horrible. So now we discriminate on this side. Now, in the next 20 years, this would be the past discrimination. So to counter that past discrimination in the next 20 years, we're going to have to discriminate on this side again. And then in the next 20 years, we're going to have to, and you keep going on that side. If you're using that logic, the discrimination never ends. To me, as a state, the solution for past discrimination is no discrimination. Everyone starts at that equality of opportunity level. Now, many people, I don't know how many of you are on the internet long enough or scroll the internet long enough to have seen the picture. There's a picture that very clearly points out how equity is, at least in the emotional sense, a very favorable thing. There's a picture where I believe it was 3 people trying to look over a fence to see into some kind of sporting game. And there was an adult, I believe a teenager looking someone, and then a little child. And they were saying equality is you give each of them $1 each. Each gets $1 each. And if each gets $1 each, what happens is the adult now towers over the fence. They could have always seen over the fence. The teenager could now see just over the fence. And with the $1, the child still cannot see over the fence. And they're saying equity, the difference with equity is you don't give each person $1. They're digging gravel in Wallerfield. You don't give each person $1. You give the child $2. You give the teenager $1, and the adult gets no bucks. And that way we get equity. That way everyone is at the same height. Now, I agree with that. In families, if you're the daddy or you're the mommy and you have 3 children, you wouldn't necessarily give them all the same amount of food, etc., etc. Of course, you do that. But the problem is, when that comes to the state level, who decides who is too tall? Who makes that decision? What ends up happening is you then give the state the power to take someone else's resources and redistribute it to someone they think is more deserving of it. Now, That statement boils down to something that goes along from him according to his ability to him according to his need. That is the tenet of communism. And I've heard some people say this: communism to the free market. Communism, the general idea is that the government controls the economy. They say who do what. The government controls everything. Now, you would hear communists say that it's the people control everything. But the problem with the people controlling everything is that all 1.3 million people in Trinidad cannot make all of the decisions. So then representatives of the people control everything. And as you may know, representatives of the people are called politicians. So then we give the politicians all the power to control everything in the country. And that's why communism has never worked. Yes, everyone ends up equally starving to death. Everyone ends up equally starving because you have a government there trying to always sprinkle where they think this one needs a little more, and okay, let's take from this one and give a little more to this, and let's take from this and give a little more to this one. And here's the problem with that also: there are people who have different desires. What if I don't care to go into farming? As someone pointed out the years ago, about a decade ago, when Dr. Dave Saran spoke about the Indians inside of the police service and inside of the regiment, someone pointed out that there is an equality of opportunity for them to apply. And if someone does not want to apply, it doesn't make sense trying to force a quota in there. It does not work. Right now in the United States, because they are doing that, right now, Asians are suffering to get into school. Asians, because of their culture, they have generally the highest two-parent home percentages. They have lots of extended families who look after the children, etc. And they have a lot of drive to learn and excel in education. So Asians, although they're, I believe, less than 10% of the population, if you're looking at those qualifying for Ivy League schools, for the top colleges in the United States, Asians are right at the top. So you know what they did? For equity's sake, they started a personality test in a lot of those Ivy schools. They test your personality to see if your personality is good enough to enter the school. And the personality test leans heavily against Asians. The Asians are suing these colleges for discrimination right now. Why should it be? If my child excels, because they're from a demographic that is accustomed to excelling, that we are supposed to hold them back to attempt to push others forward. That's not how it works. How it works, as SM Resources said earlier, did that application have an age limit? I believe it did. As you said earlier, SM Resources, there's nothing wrong with helping people. So by all means, put all the information out there, have educational programs allowing people to know that the government has these agricultural land available, show them the benefits of it, and still leave it up to personal choice. I don't like equity. Not from a government. I do not think that they are all-knowing enough. They are kind enough. They care about people enough to do honest equity. The only person I would take equity from is God. If God comes down and he is the president of the world, by all means, God, you do your equity business. God is God. He knows all that I need. Grand. You do you, God. But no politician is God. And if we are very knowledgeable of the fact that many politicians are corrupt and they do engage in corruption, if you give them the power to give state lands to who they want on the tone of equity, would we be surprised if rampant corruption passes through? I don't even like how the HDC buildings go because nobody seems to understand how they go. The idea that the government could put their thumb on the scale and push it in one direction or the other is actually scary to me. I despise that idea. Now, in case some of you cannot tell, I am actually mostly of Afro descent. I still disagree. I think things like that make demographics impotent. they cripple the demographic. I know there are many. It cripples the demographic. I always remember a statement from Frederick Douglass, an old American civil rights guy from just after slavery. And he said one of the things, the most important thing the government could do for us as black people, and he was speaking for the freed black Americans, was leave them alone. The help, I think, in my opinion, cripples these communities. Black communities in the US, if you look at their economic health, after slavery, those communities were on an upward trajectory. After civil rights in the 60s, lots of help came into the Black Afro community in the United States. They were really helped a lot. Lots of social programs. If you were a single mother, you could go and get welfare from the government. You could go get free housing inside of these tenement yard style apartment buildings. They were helping you so much. And then the upward economic movement of the US black population compared to all the other demographics. Is that really a coincidence? And some people say it's racism, but I find that hard to believe. How could people who just left slavery back in the 1800s, the early 1900s, have been excelling, moving upward? They would have been closer to slavery. They were there during Jim Crow laws. So they would have known real discrimination. They were being murdered for being of that race. And yet still their economic growth was on an upward trajectory. But as soon as so much help came in, it nosedived. I think welfare, too much help, cripples demographics. Now, I am not totally against welfare because I believe there are instances where welfare could be needed and could be very useful. I agree. Why is we potholes not fixing? Well, that's not the topic right now. I don't know. You'd have to ask the Minister of Works about that one. We're not dealing with that right now. And you threw me off with that nonsense. To me, the crippling of the demographics does not pay back for the welfare. Now, I don't totally disagree with welfare. I believe there are some people who do need it. At some points in time, some people, it may pull some people out of staring death in the face. I agree. Some people may need it. But there must be some way to get people off of it. Welfare shouldn't be a permanent thing. It's like in Trinidad and Tobago. There are permanent URP workers. And I am not saying that as saying URP is bad or lesser work. No, it's not. Roads need to clean, drains need to clean, grass needs to cut. But how are you a permanent unemployment relief worker? This is supposed to be, you lose a job, you get something to take you through for the next fortnight while you look for another job. SM Resources said, but weren't the Indo-Trinidadians helped as well? I don't know if you mean directly in terms of an affirmative action style thing. I don't recall anything where Afros were left out to the Indo population based on race. I do not recall anything as such. However, the whole Caroni Lands business was ridiculous. I say this regularly. I don't know how many of you were here when I said it before. I have no shame in saying this. I found the whole distribution of the Caroni Lands to be ridiculous. A company failed. And all of the workers got 2 acres of land, a house lot, and money. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's not how you run good business. And I found that that was one of those discrepancies in the country. It threw off a wealth balance in the country. And it wasn't based on what one person did or didn't do. It was based on government trying to buy votes. And the funny thing is, it was the PNM government trying to curry favor with the Caroni workers who were typically not PNM voters. And they still didn't vote for the PNM after they got the land too. It was ridiculous. I found that to be a ridiculous thing. It was a bold attempt at buying votes. It's ridiculous. If you look right now, the petrotrain workers were asking for something similar. They couldn't get it. The petrotrain workers, in terms of what their salaries were comparatively higher level workers than the Carney workers. So generally speaking, in business, in how you run companies, the people who are at a higher level will generally receive more when they leave the company. Petrotrain workers didn't get any 2 acres of land. They didn't get any housing lot. They got some VSAP, I suppose, but not nearly like that. That was ridiculous. So I think I'm pretty level in that. It's not like I want favor in one direction. I don't want favor in the other direction. I would like you to leave people so that they can make their free choices and determine their own destiny with their own choices. I think such a thing would encourage complacent behavior in state-owned companies, which are already, due to its nature, naturally uncompetitive. I agree. And if you look even at the Carney lands that were distributed, vast majority of the Carney lands that were distributed are not utilized because they were just given to people. They were not utilized. Lots of the housing lots are now being sold for $500,000. Carney housing lots given away by the government for free to try and buy votes are now being sold back to the nation for $500,000. And these Carney workers, and I have no problem with Carney workers. I actually benefited from that 2 acres, to be very honest with you. I benefited from it. But still I'm criticizing it because I found it was foolish. And that movement 20 years ago about may in some part be directly responsible for some of the prices we have in the housing market right now. Because you just gave out housing lots to people who didn't even necessarily need it. Some of them had their own housing lot. So if I'm living here and now I have a housing lot just sitting on ice, I don't need any competitive price. I could tell you 500,000, take it or leave it. Land don't spoil. It's going to sit right there until somebody buys it for the 500,000. And that's the consequence Trinidad is paying for some of these silly actions. Now, if you do something now where you just go and put your thumb on the scale and give out to a set of Afro-Trinidadians agricultural land just for the equity of it, what would be the downstream negative consequences of that too? And till now, the government hasn't handed over the Carney lands to the people. That's not true. There are several people living on those lands. There are several people who have bought some of those lands and sold it. There are houses being constructed on many of those lands. However, not all of them were distributed. That's correct. That's another thing with this whole government business. Now, imagine the government already did nonsense, to me, in my opinion, by just giving it away for the votes. And now, some people got it. Some people got through to get theirs, but then because the government is inefficient at everything, there are people 20 years later still begging for their house leases. Their housing lot leases. Makes no sense. Personally though, like, I know somebody who hasn't yet. Good night, Mr. Jared Kwamina. I know somebody who has a housing lot allotted to them and they haven't yet received the deed or lease or whatever for it. And to me, personally, I was going to squat on my housing lot. If you didn't give me the lease and what you told me that, well, we have allotted you lot number 139, but we aren't yet giving you the lease. Well, that is all your business. I go and squat on my lot. But that's just by the way. Why does houses need to be provided by the government? We already have a problem there. Kiki John, I agree, you know. I agree. But you really ain't considering the UDT. What's the UDT? I don't know what's the UDT. I agree. I always wondered the same thing. As I've said before, I'm also in some construction, and Trinidad has a lot of small contractors. If the land is the state land, why doesn't the state, just how they would distribute the HDC houses, distribute the land and then allow the people the same mortgage you're giving them? Because by the way, you do not get the HDC house for free. You buy it, you purchase it. So the same mortgage you're under the 3-year plan, the same mortgage that you're giving them to buy the badly built HDC houses, that same mortgage, give them it and let them pay to smaller contractors to build the houses. Wouldn't that distribute the money through the economy better? Wouldn't it distribute the money more evenly through the economy? And seeing as each individual would have vested interest in the quality of the build of their own home, you would get natural quality control for every house. I don't know how many of you have been inside of some of those HDC houses. I make some business, we make some business by just repairing HDC houses. I mean, houses just given. You arrived in the house today and you have to call the contractor tomorrow for repairs. And you're paying for that, just by the way. You're paying full price. Well, full government price for that. I always wondered that, like, just give the land. And the same loan, they could pay to a small contractor to build a better house for less money. But I always notice that these things are just, these decisions at the government and political level are just too advanced for our simpleton thinking. We are just not at that kind of level, you know. We cannot understand those sophisticated matters. Those matters are just beyond our comprehension. So they're too complicated. Those matters are too complicated. Us simpletons, we think about these issues too simply. You know, it just cannot function like that. So they take the money, hire a big contractor, who then subcontracts, takes some of the money off the top, subcontracts to the same small contractors to shoddily build the houses, because the small contractor knows if he can complete 3 houses in the time of a month and a half or however long, he'll get the money faster. He knows there isn't any quality control. The big contractor already has his money and is gone. And the same small contractors build it at a much lower quality for a much higher price. That's because those matters are too complicated. I think the public housing policy should limit the government infrastructure, utilities, pavement. The big contractor need to make a big cut. Of course, those big contractors need to make their money. How else would they make their money? Of course. So the government has to build houses on a large scale. And the other thing I always wonder about is, like, whose idea was it to build Maloney? No, not to the people who are living Maloney, but whose idea is it to build something like Maloney to put families to live in? People need space. It's a well-known thing. You put people on top of each other and it's very likely going to create a ghetto. Very likely. Anytime you put too many people in too small of an area, very often you get a crime hotspot. Especially if you put them there from less fortunate communities. People cannot even have the privacy to raise their own children. They cannot discipline their children properly. The neighbors have much more influence on your children. As your son leaves from the 3rd story to walk down the stairs to go to school, he has to pass 3 different gangs. Whose idea was that? And they're built like some kind of sweatbox cube. Some kind of sweatbox cube. Whose idea was that? But I can assure you someone made millions of dollars off of it. But once again, Nathan, the government wants their hands in too many aspects of society. Precisely. That's not the government's business. If all of the land in Trinidad and Tobago is state land, well, by all means, I agree. Since the state owns the land, I'll prefer the private market owns the land. But until then, by all means, state, distribute land. Hit me a housing lot on my chest. Probably 2 lots are joined. You know, I want some good space. Hit me one right on my chest. And then you could offer me one of the same mortgages and I'll build my own. The neighbors know you. Hey, I don't know what you mean by that, Shy Panda. Kilborn, I saw a UNC Facebook troll make a good point once. The PNM master creating crime hotspots. It's true. The neighbors know, hey, oh, what movie you watching, all kind of thing. It's true. It's true. And the PNM is master at that because the PNM, remember, I usually say this. My view of the parties, one party is based more on race, one party is based more on class. And the PNM believes like they have the right idea of how to really run Trinidad and Tobago. And I think that idea came up through the history of the PNM. Remember, they were the party in charge of getting us our independence. So they were very instrumental in that. They were at the start there of Trinidad and Tobago. And from then, it seems like the PNM believes that they know how to really run this country. But something that you notice all around the world, the more government gets involved, generally speaking, the worse things go. The government, and it's not even necessarily saying the government had bad intent. I don't know, they may have had good intent, but they are just incapable of doing something like that. That's not within the ability of the government. They cannot see to everyone's needs because they don't know everyone's needs. That's the beauty of something called the free market. The free market allows each person to make their individual decisions, knowing what they would need for themselves. I phrase it like this. If you had to make a decision, who do you think would spend your money better? You or the government? If I was Oprah on this live, if I was Oprah on this live, and I was giving out $10,000 checks, we ain't that big. We ain't nearly that big. We're talking hypothetically here. Don't get too excited. But if I was Oprah on here, giving out $10,000 checks, and everyone in the live gets a $10,000 check, and you have the option to give the $10,000 check fully to the PNM government and tell them, please PNM, spend this as best you can. Or you have the option to keep the $10,000. For I am sure, knowing how us Trinis operate, I say that and I don't doubt, everyone in the live already know the whole that 10,000 falling in. I could tell you, I have a baby girl on the way, you know. That $10,000 is going to disappear so quickly. There are holes already needed. There are holes already in need of filling that would need that $10,000. And so if you had the choice between giving PNM, and it's not necessarily on PNM, giving the government or keeping it for yourself to use, we know who you believe would spend it better. 10, please. Richard Glubman, stop it. Richard, stop it. Stop it. Give the government. Stop it. we know ain't nobody doing that. We know ain't nobody doing that. You could be a millionaire and you still know where you're going to spend that $10,000. It's not hard to decide. And then versus giving it to the government for them to go and pay the attorney general, that $10,000 might be half their rent for one of the attorney general's family's building. Some of those buildings that are 3/4 empty. That $10,000 would pay for the electricity that is running for the air condition that is running overnight in all of those government buildings right now. Air condition running overnight. Well, yeah, that's where 10,000 goes. A half hour of the government AC. Your 10,000 gone. While you know, if you step in your house and you see people just running AC willy-nilly while nobody, could you imagine? Electricity cheaper in Trinidad. But could you imagine, you step into your house, you have a couple AC units, let's just say you do, and you see somebody in your house have on all the AC units and they left it on while you all went out over the weekend? You all went out to a beach house over the weekend, took a little Miaro trip. To point out my map again, let's get that nice direction. You all went down Miaro. Take a nice little Miaro trip and in a beach house relaxing. And somebody leave the AC on over the weekend while you're all gone. Listen, I know some Trinis reaching back and the neighbors going to hear all the costs they know. Because you have that frugality with your money. The problem is people spend other people's money too easily. Thus, we all know who you would decide to keep that money. And to me, it's the same thing as it comes to the housing. Like, why? But then again, we know why. Oh yeah, by the way, the axis of the next tropical wave to hit TNT on Tuesday. Just to leave the government for a bit, some weather news, people, just a weather break. The axis of the next tropical wave to hit TNT on Tuesday. The Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service has noted that there are mixed conditions with sunshine and moderate showers in a few areas due to low-level convergence and localized effects. According to an update to its social media pages, there's the risk of an afternoon thunderstorm developing in some areas. Besides, the axis of the next tropical wave is expected to reach Trinidad and Tobago sometime on Tuesday evening into Wednesday. So, rain tomorrow, and everywhere already saturated. If a drizzle fall, it seems like places flooding right now. How much again them paintings cost again? You mean the charts? You mean the charts? The charts, I believe they're 30 or somewhere like that, under 50. They are, I told you, they are really reasonable. Again, plug into the sponsor, the new charts that you see up, SM Resources. Hit them a follow. They are right there in the chat. They are over on Facebook at Study Monkey and Associates. Hit them up. Good stuff. Really good stuff. I saw a catalog of some of the stuff they have, and it is amazing, man. I like it. Nice product placement, Nathan. It is. It was bad along the southwestern peninsula today with that rain. Yep. Good evening, Scafty. I feel like it's been a while. How things? So, yeah, tomorrow is more rain, just by the way. Now to the bacchanal a little bit. PNM Women's League defends PM's wife, condemns UNC senator. The PNM National Women's League is condemning the opposition's public verbal attack on the wife of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, Sharon Clark Rowley. In a release yesterday, the league denounced opposition leader Kamala Prasad-Bises's silence on Senator Anil Roberts' recent attack on Mrs. Clark Rowley, which it interprets as her support. The Women's League of the People's National Movement stands in solidarity with Mrs. Clark Rowley and strongly denounces Kamala Prasad-Bises's, the first female prime minister, support of the vile and absolutely disgusting discussions led by the United National Congress, and in particular her senatorial pick, repulsive, vile, and despicable attacks against the wife of the prime minister in the public domain. I don't know if that's true. I have no idea where this even came from. Where's the evidence? I haven't heard of some kind of substantive evidence of this. To make such an accusation without evidence is threading a very dangerous line. I find that really, really and truly to be repulsive. And it should be outside of the political scope, because it's irrelevant to the political scope. I find such things to be offensive. That reminds me of when another parliamentarian from Tobago a while back came out with some really disgusting slanderous stuff about same Dr. Rowley's father and accusations of assault and abuse in the history, etc. Like, I find those things should be outside of the political scope. I find something like that should make you unelectable. That should make you unelectable. It's ridiculous. It's literally only playing into the commerce and bacchanal hype. When I see someone attempting to be a serious political commentator, and that's the main thing they're aiming at, it diminishes you in my eyes. And The thing is, I find even if it was a true accusation, it's still none of our business. It's still none of our business. Those things are very sensitive. That's someone's family. Now, I believe as a politician, you open up yourself for public criticism. But that's the politician, and that's in the political sphere. I wouldn't go to insult Mrs. Prasad Bisesar's husband. He is not in the political sphere. He's a private citizen. There shouldn't be a need for something like that. And to get into the more bacchanalish side now, I found that the person who brought this up should have been someone who knows that this isn't the kind of thing that should be in the public sphere. I mean, in his case, there was actual moving picture proof. Clear, real clear, real clear, real clear proof. And now, the thing is, in that instance, that actually was more pertinent to the public because there were accusations that after the act was done, recorded, and distributed, there was allegedly a hit placed out on a particular person. There was allegedly a hit, and that hit involved the same group that was tied to allegedly the murder of one of our most prominent prosecutors. I don't know how well some of your memories work, but my memory when it comes to certain things works really well. I remember very well a particular group tied to a certain sporting program and then tied to a certain murder was also allegedly tied to a hit. So in that case, there was actually public concern for the whole incident. But if there wasn't the allegations of the hit and all of that, even though it's a video, the video made it public. But beside that, that isn't really anyone's business. The private life of private citizens isn't really anyone's business. No one would like that. No one would like that for themselves. And like, I think some people don't really think about these things from the human perspective. From the human perspective. Bear in mind, for some people like this, like when I think about this, I think about the reality that in a situation like this, this may be the point where someone's life may be literally unraveling. It might be the worst point in their life. Even if it's true, their life may be unraveling. And then you are making a public mockery at that point in time, with no interest in benefiting the country or benefiting yourself. It doesn't benefit anyone. You are doing this purely out of cruelty to the other person. Like, that is evil by definition. The sole reason you are doing this is cruelty to the other person. It's not about making a political point. It's not about making a campaign statement per se. It's not about saying what policies you have. It's purely out of cruelty to the other person. And I find that to be evil. It is said that humans are the only creatures capable of evil because we understand. Can't they sue for defamation? As I've said before, accusations of infidelity that is literally written in black ink in our law books as one of the prime reasons for defamation. Now, I couldn't watch the entire video, but the man who made the accusations attempted to, make it not very direct and not say anything directly pertaining to this, and making it clear what he's saying, making it overt what he's saying. The man seemed to have had that intent. But who knows how a judge would see it? I don't know if it would reach to defamation, if it elevates to that level the way how he said it. There were a lot of innuendos inside there, more innuendos than actual clear definitive statements. Amber Heard did the same to Johnny, yes, and he still won. But Trinidad court is not necessarily the United States court, and I don't know. I just don't know. I do not. But I find that in parties. As I was saying, they say humans are the only creatures capable of evil because we are able to understand another person's pain, someone else's pain. We are self-conscious, so we know what causes pain in us. We know what happens and how we feel about it. And we also know that if we do the same thing to someone else, how they will feel about it. So we are capable of perpetrating an action on someone with the intent of making them feel a negative way about it. Now, when a lion eats a gazelle, they're not aiming to cause the gazelle pain. They're not trying to torture the gazelle. Even if you see a cat playing with an animal before they eat it, it's not about cruelty to the animal as such. They're playing. They're not considering it as causing the animal pain for causing its sake. On the other side, on the human side, if you cause pain for causing pain's sake, I consider that evil. I don't understand the point in that kind of behavior. The sad part is they still want best people to go up when your family can become a target. Correct. Correct. But I think this is actually a political technique from some people. And to speak candidly, I find it to be a political technique more so from the opposition. The PNM has their own techniques, but this seems to be a political technique from the opposition more so. As soon as someone enters seemingly political life, if they only seem like they lean away from the UNC, they build such a furor against them. They did it to the Attorney General. And that issue, I believe there were some unwise moves from the Attorney General, but even the Law Association cleared him. And then when the Law Association cleared him, they went in on the Law Association. They went in on Dr. Parasram, the CMO. And I think the idea there is to put a chill factor. Their aim is to put a chill factor. If you, as a knowledgeable person, as someone with skill, want to put yourself forward to serve in the public sphere, you do not dare come up against us. If you come up against us, we are going to make your entire family's life a living hell. And I find that to be an evil thing. That does not benefit the country. That's not what you want. You want, personally, if I am a UNC supporter, I would want the PNM to get the best people on their side so that even if I lose, at least my country does well. If I were a PNM supporter, I would want the UNC to get the best people on their side, so even if I lose, my country does well. Have these people no care for country? I don't understand that. I find that to be ridiculous. I really hope that the opposition leader distances herself from that and condemns it, in fact, and reins in that guy. That is really inappropriate. I find that to be so despicable to have from a parliamentarian. Like, that's, you're imagining the international picture? The international picture? Our Trini politician on a video making petty comments about who won who, ha ha ha. Nah man. What's the time? Let's see. Wow. We went for quite some time there. I feel we could wrap it up there. But the supporters, rather a party, failed to prove a point. Some supporters do. When I see elections, And after the election, you hear people wishing bad on the country. We gonna eat grass, all of we gonna dead. I like, okay, even if I distrust this person in governing, I wish them success. I wish them success. If someone is governing the country that I'm living in, if someone is governing the country that I'm living in, I would wish them success. Why would I want my country to crash? That's beyond my understanding. Anywho, let's dive out. That's all I have for now, folks. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. Ria is very serious. What are you serious? Nathan, the Mindful Meetup. Right, before we leave, yes, Ria is right. This month, now, I see the government is speaking about quite a few activities surrounding the Emancipation Day. Redan Fire jumping really over there on Instagram, boy. As per usual, people, if you missed the live, you can catch it over on YouTube. I see now Instagram is allowing me to save my live too, so maybe you could catch it over on Instagram. The last Friday's live racked up an easy 140 something views. I was like, wow. Well done over there on Instagram. So you could view the live, I believe, over on Instagram too. But it's over on YouTube also, where you could actually see the news articles. Nathan Springer over there on YouTube. Feel free to head over there and subscribe. But yes, Independence Day coming up at the end of this month. Our 60th. We qualify for NIS. Trinidad could receive some NIS pension now. We qualify for NIS. Just before they raise the age. You know, they're talking about raising that NIS age. So we qualified for NIS before they raise the age. Well done, Trinidad and Tobago. Well done, well done. Now, independence. NIS pension. Independence coming up at the end of the month. We're going to have a meetup. Now, as I've told so many people, I am not that much of a planner, you know. So I would really like if there are ideas and suggestions about where this might be. You know, I have no problem with that. But as I said, the government has put out a list of all an assortment of different activities. It could be there also. Nathan just called the day and we could organize. All right. Where's my calendar? Call the day and we could organize. All right. Independence is the 31st. That's what? Wednesday? Nah, we ain't going midweek like that. The evening of the 27th, Saturday evening. I know there are some people who observe 6 on a Friday to Saturday 6 and they do nothing in that time. So Saturday evening, 27th. Saturday the 27th. The evening. Look at the weekend before. Yes, that's the weekend before. The 27th of August. Saturday, the 27th of August. That is the day we are having the Mindful Meetup. Sometime on the evening of Saturday, the 27th. The date is out there. The plans shall be announced soon. Well, I have work, but if majority make it, then that's... What? You work on a Saturday? What kind of public servant you are? Who has work Saturday evening? Well, I could switch it to Sunday evening. What? So, Ria, what you talking about? When we going to have this meetup if you're working all weekend for free? What kind of work you talking about, Ria? What kind of work you do all weekend long for free? Free. All weekend? No, this weekend I worked Saturday and Sunday. But we're not talking about this weekend. We're talking about Best Village Finals. Oh! Vibes. That is work. Vibes. Questionable. So, Ria, if you're not available on any of the weekends, do you really expect most people to make it on a weekday? Would you be working on the 27th and 28th? Both the Saturday and Sunday? Which day would be best, Ria? You're the limiting factor here. So which day would be best? The 28th I free. The 27th is week. Could it be 2 days? Wow. Wow. You have a taste for liming. Oh, young king. Oh, young king. All right. So not the 27th, the 28th. Sunday, the 28th of August, we shall meet up. Sunday, the 28th of August, we shall meet up. One on the weekend and one on a weekday. Well, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. According to how the meetup goes, we could meet up again. Man, say 2 days better we go across. Hey. I have a child on the way. Let's talk about big one thing. Hey, by the way, I was supposed to do an unboxing. Good thing. Sunday the 28th, guys. Correct. Sunday the 28th. Write that in your calendar. That day is sure. I'm doing an unboxing, guys. So, one of my favorites regulars knows that I'm getting my baby girl soon. You know, my baby girl is going to be arriving soon. And I got a gift. Nathan, I know you was considering the Ria as a name, and I just wanted to say I'm honored. Okay. Feel that honor, Ria. Feel that honor. Where is the meetup? Young King, that is to be decided. Now, check thing. To be honest with you, I am already preparing myself. So you see that baby shower? You see that baby shower? I know the oars going to get ridiculous. The oars, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, what is it with tiny clothes? What is it with the tiny clothes? That is just... Oh. Watch these stripes. And possibly my favorite. Look at this one. You all seeing that? You all see it? Jeez. And just so you know, the box is full. There's a mitten with a matching hat. A matching hat. Dog. I'm starting to get the feeling, though, that my unborn child is going to start taking up more closet space than me. I'm starting to get that feeling. I am yet to print the Baby Mindful onesie. I'm telling y'all, the Baby Mindful onesie coming out. When you all see that Baby Mindful, it's coming. It's coming. All right, folks, thank you very much for joining. It was nice as usual. It was nice as usual. I really enjoyed this as per usual. So I will see you guys again tomorrow night for the next Mindful Live. If I am not here at 9, you will see me at 9:30. It's either 9 or 9:30. I've decided that. If you don't see me pop up at 9, I will be there at 9:30. South Park, I am not sure. I am not sure about the South Park. We maybe a more central location for the South people, but there are North people too. Maybe. South Park, come now, man. Oh gosh. South Park may be inconvenient to some people. It may be just inconvenient to some. Who knows? According to how it goes, we might have a Southland meetup. We could have a Eastland meetup, and we'll see how it all goes. All you want to see a movie hour. What it have to do in some... It have to lime outside. Sit down by, what is that, the fountain? The South Park is the liming spot for the Southland youth. The Southland youth are always in South Park, ever present there. So I will see you guys again tomorrow night for the next Mindful Live. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained as per usual. And stay tuned for Mindful Educational. I'm yet to finalize the name, but the lessons that would be launching coming with the new term. If you are interested, feel free to hit me up, probably finally registration, but I will be launching that page very soon, so you'll be able to register over there. Thank you very much. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm sorry, mostly adults. Yeah. So I will see you guys tomorrow at 9 or 9:30. Peace. It was nice.